When Governor John White returned to Roanoke Island in 1590, the only thing he found was silence. The houses were gone, the fences dismantled, and every soul, men, women, and children, had vanished. The only clue was a single word carved deep into the bark of an oak tree: Croatoan. That single word has haunted American history for more than 4 centuries. Was it a message, a direction, or a curse? No one knows. But this is the true story, built from letters, journals, and the whispers of time, of how one of the most promising English colonies in the New World became America's first great unsolved mystery. Across the endless sea, 1580 for 1587. The dream of a new world began not with faith or freedom, but with greed and glory. In 1584, Queen Elizabeth I of England granted Sir Walter Raleigh permission to establish a colony in the Americas, a foothold in the New World that could challenge Spanish power and enrich the English crown. Raleigh was no fool. He knew the risks: storms, starvation, and hostile tribes. But he also knew the rewards: gold, trade, and empire. So he gathered sailors, soldiers, and settlers, promising them a land overflowing with resources and opportunity. That same year, his first expedition reached the shores of what is now North Carolina, landing on a small, forested island called Roanoke. The explorers described it as paradise: mild weather, fertile soil, and friendly native tribes like the Croatoans. They sent glowing reports back to England, convincing Raleigh and the Queen that a permanent settlement could thrive there. And so, in 1587, the second expedition set sail, this time carrying not just soldiers, but families. Among them were Eleanor Dare, her husband Ananias Dare, and their unborn child. Their leader was Eleanor's father, Governor John White, an artist and loyal servant of Raleigh. They carried seeds, tools, livestock, and the hopes of an empire. A new beginning. When the ships arrived in July 1587, Roanoke was eerily quiet. The old fort from the previous expedition lay abandoned, overgrown with vines. The timbers were gray and weathered, as though no man had touched them in years. Still, Governor White encouraged the settlers to rebuild. "We are here to plant England's future," he told them, sketching the island in his journal by firelight. Life on Roanoke was difficult. The heat was suffocating, the mosquitoes relentless. Food quickly ran short, and relations with local tribes grew tense. At first, they traded fish and corn with the friendly Croatoans, whose chief, Manteo, had even traveled to England before. But soon, misunderstandings and suspicion poisoned the fragile peace. One Englishman was killed by a native arrow. In revenge, the settlers burned an entire village that turned out to be the wrong one. The dream was beginning to rot. Then, in August 1587, amid this struggle, a miracle occurred. Eleanor Dare gave birth to a daughter, Virginia Dare, the first English child born on American soil. The colonists celebrated. They believed the birth was a sign of divine blessing. But the food was almost gone. The crops were failing. Governor White decided he must return to England for supplies, promising his people he would be back within the year. As he sailed away, the settlers waved from the shore, their figures growing smaller against the red sunset. None of them would ever be seen again. Return to silence, 1590. The return voyage took longer than anyone expected. England was at war with Spain, and all ships were commandeered for defense against the Spanish Armada. White was trapped in England for 3 long years, haunted by the faces he had left behind, especially that of his daughter and baby granddaughter. Finally, in August 1590, he managed to return to Roanoke. As his ship approached the island under a pale moon, everything seemed still. No smoke, no voices, no movement. He and his men went ashore at dawn. The forest was thick and silent. Birds chirped in the distance, but there were no human sounds. Then they saw it. The settlement was gone. The houses dismantled, the palisades torn down, no graves, no blood, nothing. Just one clue. Carved into a wooden post was the word, Croatoan. Nearby, on a tree, the letters CRO were carved faintly into the bark. White's heart pounded. Croatoan was the name of a nearby island and the tribe of their friend, Chief Manteo. Could his people have taken refuge there? He wanted to sail immediately, but a sudden storm tore through the coast, nearly destroying the ship. The crew, terrified, refused to continue. White never reached Croatoan Island. He returned to England, broken, defeated, and forever haunted by the disappearance of his daughter, his granddaughter, and an entire colony. Theories and shadows. Over the centuries, countless theories have tried to explain what happened to the lost colony. Some believe they joined the Croatoan tribe, marrying and blending into native life. Others think they moved inland, killed by disease or starvation. There are darker stories, that they were massacred by hostile tribes or captured and enslaved by the Spanish. And then there's the strangest theory of all, that something beyond human happened on Roanoke Island, something connected to the mysterious word Croatoan, which has appeared throughout American folklore ever since. From the deathbed of Edgar Allan Poe, where he supposedly whispered the word Croatoan, to the carved marks found in ghost towns centuries later, the name keeps returning, as if echoing from the lost colony itself, the word in the wood. When John White stared at the word Croatoan, carved deep into the gray bark of that tree, he believed it was a message, not a warning. In his journal, he wrote, "I greatly joyed that I had found a certain token of their safe being at Croatoan, where Manteo was born. It was hope, faint, fragile, but hope nonetheless. And yet, he would never reach that island. Fate, or perhaps something darker, would keep him from it forever. The word would remain there, exposed to the wind and salt air, fatting slowly as the centuries rolled by. But its echo would not fade. It would spread, whispered by sailors, repeated by settlers, eventually woven into American myth. No one knew then that Croatoan would become a symbol of vanishing, of things that disappear without trace. The search for answers. In the decades that followed, other settlers came. They built towns and forts along the Carolina coast. But none forgot Roanoke. In 1607, just 20 years later, the Jamestown colony was founded, the first successful English settlement in the New World. Captain John Smith of Jamestown heard rumors from native tribes about white people living inland, men with white skin and gray eyes, who spoke strangely and dressed differently. Smith's curiosity grew. Could they be descendants of the lost colonists? He sent scouts, but no proof ever returned. Later explorers, traders, and missionaries heard similar whispers of English blood among native tribes, of stone ruins hidden deep in Carolina forests. But every expedition ended the same way, with uncertainty, confusion, and fear. In 1701, the English explorer John Lawson met the Hatteras tribe, descendants of the Croatoans. He wrote in his diary that some of them had gray eyes, a rare trait among Native Americans. They told him stories of ancestors who could read from paper and build in English ways. Lawson believed these were the mixed descendants of the Roanoke settlers. But his notes ended abruptly, because he was later captured and killed by natives while exploring further inland. His death only deepened the mystery. The Phantom of Croatoan. As the centuries passed, the word Croatoan began to appear in strange, unconnected places, always tied to disappearance or death. It became something more than a historical footnote. It became a curse. In 1818, the pirate Blackbeard, whose real name was Edward Teach, ruled the Carolina coast. He was said to have avoided a certain island near Roanoke, claiming it was cursed by the word carved in the trees. In 1849, when the writer Edgar Allan Poe was found delirious and near death in Baltimore, he reportedly muttered one final word before dying: Croatoan. Decades later, the same word was found carved into the wooden post of his boarding room. In 1888, the notorious stagecoach robber Ambrose Bierce, also a writer, vanished in Mexico while researching disappearances. In his abandoned journal, one word was written on the last page: Croatoan. Even as late as 1937, when Amelia Earhart's plane disappeared over the Pacific, a hangar she had used in North Carolina was found with Croatoan scrawled faintly in chalk on a beam. Coincidence, or a haunting echo from that long-lost colony? The Dare Stones. In 1937, nearly 350 years after the colony vanished, a farmer in Georgia stumbled upon a strange engraved stone near a creek. It was covered in Old English script. The message claimed to be written by Eleanor Dare, John White's daughter, mother of Virginia Dare. The stone read, Ananias Dare and Virginia went hence unto heaven 1591. Any Englishman show John White governor this stone. Eleanor Dare. The inscription suggested that the colonists had moved inland, faced disease and attacks, and eventually perished. Over the next few years, 47 more stones were found across the Carolinas, tracing a supposed trail of the survivors. Some believed the stones were genuine, a heartbreaking record of their journey. Others cried hoax. Modern analysis later showed that most of the stones were forgeries, carved by a man seeking attention and money. Yet a few, the earliest ones, remain unproven, with genuine 16th century wear patterns and tool marks. If even one of them is authentic, it means Eleanor Dare survived long enough to carve her story into stone. Bones beneath the sand. In the 1990s, archaeologists began new excavations on Roanoke and nearby Hatteras Island, once called Croatoan. They found English pottery shards, gun flints, and a fragment of a slate tablet with faint writing, evidence that some colonists did survive and lived with native tribes. DNA tests on certain native descendants in the region even showed traces of European lineage predating Jamestown. It seemed to confirm at least part of the theory. The lost colony hadn't vanished. They had adapted, but there were strange details: 2 bones buried in ceremonial circles, objects melted by extreme heat, and eerie carvings of spirals and suns unlike anything English or Native American. Some archaeologists began whispering about ancient local legends, of spirits that guarded the forests and punished trespassers. The Croatoans themselves had long spoken of a shadow spirit that came from the sea, one that took those who did not belong. The Last Journal. In 2012, researchers examining a map drawn by John White himself made a shocking discovery. Beneath a patch, a small piece of paper glued to the map centuries ago, was a hidden symbol. When carefully removed, it revealed a fort-shaped mark about 50 miles inland from Roanoke. White had drawn it and deliberately covered it up. Was this the true refuge of the lost colonists? Did he know more than he ever admitted? And why would he hide it? An archaeological dig at that inland site, now called Site X, uncovered 16th century English artifacts mixed with native pottery. Not enough to prove a full colony, but enough to suggest survivors. Enough to whisper that the story didn't end in silence, it just changed form.